He is our council person, and he's got his hand on the house.
Good evening, everybody. Gary's right, I apologize. I didn't realize the same thing was tonight, so I obviously plan on watching it later. It's good to see everyone. I know Stephanie is supposed to be here at some point fairly soon. I will at least speak for myself. The genesis of this really came from the fact that I grew up in Lakeview. I went to Fitzgerald's all the time as a kid. I just want to make sure that the places that we went to as kids remain vibrant for the community for a long time. When I got elected to office, remember, we had about a 6-month layover between the time we were elected in 2017 and when we actually took office in May of 2018. And what I learned was there had already been work going on between Susan Guidry, who's my predecessor, Jennifer Van Franken, and the state. So in the chronology of events, and Carrie, interrupt me if I miss anything of significant note, is the first thing we learned is that Jefferson Parish has a little bit of the sea line and Orleans has everything else, but the state really owns the water bottom, so nothing could happen until Jefferson Parish decided to lease everything back to the city and Jefferson Parish. So Representative Hilferty, either in 2018 or 2019, offered a bill in the legislature to lease the land back to both Orleans and Jefferson Parish, so that way we essentially would deal with the state, but it made it much easier for purposes of trying to get anything accomplished. P.S. I know all of you live in Orleans Parish. Trying to get things accomplished in one parish is not an easy thing. Trying to get something accomplished in Orleans Parish, plus Jefferson Parish, plus the state, is probably one of the biggest lifts that we've had in a very long time, and trying to make sure that we're all communicating with each other about what's going on. So I think the next thing that happened was the only zoning issue that was different between Orleans and Jefferson Parish is Jefferson Parish had a 60-foot height difference where Orleans had a 60-foot, and they asked us to go up 5 feet so that way we equaled off with everybody who was there. Fine. So we passed something in 2018 again or 2019, pre-COVID, to get into that spot. Then COVID hits. So essentially, we're still very much interested in doing this project, but obviously businesses are shut down. And candidly, I was at a point of, I'm glad nothing has happened, because I would feel horrible about investing money and doing things when all these businesses may have gone sideways. Then the person who was running this inside City Hall wasn't there anymore, and so for basically a year and a half, I had nobody in the administration to talk to. And unlike Jefferson Parish, where their council members kind of control the flow of how things go, we're limited by the executive branch and need them to take control of everything. So in 2020, finally we signed a cooperative endeavor agreement between Orleans and Jefferson Parish. And essentially, I told the city all I needed from that agreement between the two parishes to cooperate were two things. Number one is, because of everything that happened at Six Flags, I'd like our office to have some involvement in the RFP process because of what a mess Six Flags had been, the fact that residents didn't feel like they had a way to wait. That's number one. Number two, I said I know the residents in this area in Lakeview will blow us up if we don't do anything publicly, so we have to have at least one public meeting in Orleans Parish and one public meeting in Jefferson Parish. So begrudgingly, they agreed to do both of those things. That CEA got put into place. Then, because of lack of action, nothing else happened. We actually had to sign a second CEA that was essentially the same terms on all of those issues. Then, as we're getting closer to where we are right now, I learned Municipal Yacht Harbor is really the responsible party for the area, and the city would have to lease back from them. However, Municipal Yacht Harbor, A, has a new executive director, B, has an entirely new board, and C, has not done a project of this size and scope in the past. So we asked, can we make sure that the one entity in the city that has this kind of experience is at the table and working hand in glove with Municipal Yacht Harbor? That's New Orleans Building Corporation. They help out with the Sanger. They help out with the Plaza. They're the ones who negotiate the lease on Harrah's. They're the ones who do the riverfront. So we've really been in a place of, honestly, a lot of bureaucracy to get not very far down the field in terms of where we are. I think the next steps are to see if somebody is going to RFP out legal services to see who can help in terms of lawyering all of this have a consultant who will look at everything from everybody's perspective, see what's going on, and then we come back to the community. Because at this point, I don't think there really is any plan that anybody has in place about what wants to be done. I will also say this, probably about 3 months ago, before the budget stuff got underway, I spoke specifically with Councilmember Van Franken and Representative Hilferty and said, I do not wake up in the morning excited about housing projects. Like that's not my job, is to build development, particularly out here where there is plenty of things. So I'd like to dispel two things. Number one, as Representative Hilferty walks in, we were both very much opposed to the development of the Pearl. I think everybody in this room knows that that got defeated. I would like to think part of that has to do with a letter that Stephanie sent to the applicable DNR, Department of Natural Resources, and also my opposition. And then also that I'm not interested in this being like the Marseille or any of the other places that are down there too. I've also heard that this may be affordable housing. I don't know where that has come from. And so to dispel any housing rumors, and I'll turn the floor over to you, what I've asked Representative Hilferty to do as we look at passing legislation about what might go here is to specifically exclude housing. I'm not interested in having a housing discussion. I don't want that to be a focal point. So I said just take it out of anything that you may file, so that way there's nobody who thinks that this might be something that we are actively pursuing. So Stephanie, I kind of went through the chronology.
Oh, thank you. And I'm sorry I was late. My daughter goes to St. Pius, and the club sign-ups are at 6 p.m. And my husband and I were both, anyway. So thank you all for being here. I'm glad when Joe and I met with Carrie, I was glad to hear you guys were having this meeting so we could really discuss. I mean, you guys are the neighbors closest to this potential project. I'll be honest, I know the meetings occurred several years ago that originally started discussing this. There was legislation passed in, I believe, 2017 or 18 to allow the state to lease the water bottom. That's a kind of a procedural thing that has to be done to allow the state to enter into a lease. That was done, and then the project just sat. There was not much being done as the parishes worked through that CEA, and I think it kind of got stalled one side or the other between Orleans and Jefferson Parish.
Maybe on us.
Okay,
To be honest.
okay, on Orleans Parish's side. As far as working through a CEA of how this would be worked through, this is an interesting piece of land, and then it's the trifecta, and any real estate developers in the room will appreciate it. It's Jefferson, Orleans, and the state with the water bottoms. So recently discussions have been coming up, and as Councilman DeRusso previously referenced, as it was to some of the housing pieces, and so Joe and I said, I think it's time that we have a discussion with the neighbors, understand where you guys are coming from, explain to you